Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a product for massage therapy or for any skin that was clean, preservative-free, offered a little bit of grip and a little bit of glide, and was squeezable? Now there is. It's called Slow Your Roll, and I'll leave a link in the description. Wouldn't it also be amazing to have a video that explained how to work on a neck, your clients or your friends or your loved ones, and it offered a little more insights into what is going on with the muscles and structures inside the neck, explained how to think about working on the neck, and gave you a little more confidence with your techniques? Well, this video is going to do just that. Listen, the neck is complicated, anatomically, physiologically, but also energetically. It's known as the gateway between the head and the body, or the mind and the soul. So the necessity for the neck to carry a lot of communication, whether that be blood or lymph or sensory input or motor output, there is a merging of energy, both in more ancient Eastern thoughts and more modern Western medicine, that creates complicated pain and a frustrating inability to understand it. While it is essential to know the muscles and tissues that you're working on, it is also equally, if not more important, to fully understand the circumstances that are leading to this issue and the complicated human who is dealing with it. Okay, so the muscles of the neck are not only responsible for holding the head up and moving it around, but they're also responsible for stabilizing the cervical spine and supporting the incredibly important vessels that live here. The other huge consideration that is not always at the forefront of every practitioner's process is the fact that the neck dictates how our personalities and characters become forward-facing. Think about it this way: the deepest layers of who we are, traits like shame, pride, curiosity, anxiety, sparks communication in the brain that sends impulses to the muscle tissues of the neck that then define the positions of how we hold our head. These become innate postures that we often don't think about, but hold the foundation of how we do everything else in the world. So these may not be things that we can work on directly with our clients, but if we understand these layers and these elements of who they are deep down, then understanding their chronic pain may be a little less confusing. For example, in this video with this client, I know that she's trying to manage unresolved posterior neck pain. There is definitely some tension in the suboccipitals and the splenius capitis and cervicis, and because I happen to know that she frequents the gym, some discomforts that come with overuse. But I also know that she's short. And if you're short, you know that looking up a lot is a thing. So I'm taking all of this into account as I do my work. And while I might be focused with a taller client on shortening the posterior neck muscles, with this client, I want to think about softening them, but also creating length at the same time. I've got her head in my left hand. So as I do the work with my right hand, through the upper traps, into the levator scapula, down into the splenius muscles, and towards the attachments at the transverse processes and up into the skull, I'm thinking about keeping her head slightly tilted down with my left hand. I'm also, it's important to note, staying in communication with her. I'm not chatting about the weather or anything superficial. I'm checking in with her about how the work is feeling, but also asking her to drop in and, number one, allow the work in the back to let go, and number two, start to think about the connection between the back of her shoulders and her neck to all of the muscles and structures in the front. So I'm wanting to know how her jaw is feeling, how her pecs are feeling, how her shoulders are feeling, and hoping to bring a more balanced connection between her posterior and anterior structures. Okay, I know this work doesn't look very dynamic, but neck work doesn't have to be full of complicated techniques and crazy positions. Holding in the neck and creating compressions and movements that are small offers time and a presence to hold the tissues and create a safe space for those neural connections that might be feeling jammed or lost or confused in this bottleneck. Remember, these tissues are actually doing a lot physically, in blood flow, in lymph flow, in soft tissue function, but because there is so much communication between the head and the body, or the mind and the spirit, subtle movements can be unbelievably profound in the neck. I'm bringing this work down into the shoulders just for a minute because it'd be really awkward to try to connect all of this work to her feet, and grounding some of what might be going on into the shoulders is the best way to keep a steady balance. Using a soft fist or a flat palm is a good idea while you're doing this, and then getting back into the specific work with fingertips or thumbs is a great way to redirect focus. Keeping all of these layers of who our client is in the forefront is a great idea, and it's a great way to guide the work that you're doing. But another really effective method that can be dovetailed with any of your approaches is thinking about how you're accessing the belly of the muscle as opposed to where it connects to the bones. Right at the base of the skull, there is so much going on. This is where we access the suboccipitals, but it's also where we access the connections of the splenius capitis, the longissimus muscle of the erector spinae, and of course, the upper traps. Working with the belly of a muscle involves understanding how to work with contractile tissue. So muscles contract and relax, but they're connected to bones via connective tissue. And working with connective tissue is a whole different beast. I mean, it's all connected. Muscle tissue and connective tissue are deeply intertwined. But where a muscle becomes a tendon and where that tendon attaches to a bone, rather than experiencing cramps or trigger points like what might happen in a muscle, it's most likely going to get stuck. Connective tissue wants to connect, and so when it overconnects, things get sticky. There are incredible ways to deal with stuck connective tissue, but they don't always work in the neck because the neck is the neck. Try this. Once you've found that tissue that is stuck and your client is confirming that you're on the right spot, soften those tissues onto your fingertips. So here with this client, I'm going to bring her head to that same side and rotate and laterally flex her head and neck so that my pressure can sink a little deeper in without a lot of force. And then I'm going to ask her to take a big, deep breath. I don't think I need to elaborate here on the relationship between breathing and a healthy parasympathetic nervous system. I do want to point out, though, that the more conscious your client is with that breath, the more effective your work is going to be. Asking them to sip more air in at the top of the breath and letting gravity take over at the bottom of the breath accentuates inhibiting the sympathetic response and allowing those tissues to let go to a degree that promotes the efficacy of your work. Once you and your client have tapped into that breath, it's incredible to feel the difference in the tissue. This might be harder for you as the practitioner if you're not in tune yet with the subtle differences between tense tissue and relaxed tissue, but chances are your client is going to feel a huge difference. Side note, if you are a newer hands-on practitioner and you're nervous about never being able to feel those subtle differences, don't be. Keep practicing. It'll come. So once you've addressed the muscle bellies and the connections along the cervical spine and at the base of the skull, it's time to bring your focus to the other side of those muscles, down into the thoracic vertebrae and the ribs. I'm keeping the back of my hand firmly on the table as I slide underneath her shoulder, and then I'm pulling my fingers up, and as I bring my hand back towards me, her weight becomes the pressure. There are so many cool techniques from this position in the upper back and the shoulder that address neck pain. And I've got a second video on that coming soon. But for now, we're just making that connection. Repeat this a couple times, and let's bring that work back up into the neck itself. My focus here is to make nice, and this is a term I love to use when I've done some deeper work and I want to make sure that the tissues don't hate me. With flat finger pads, I'm drawing circles along those deeper connections up into the base of the skull and drawing them laterally all the way out to the mastoid process behind the ear, and my goal here is to reinforce that state of calm. Any work in the neck is going to walk that fine line between what's happening physiologically and what's happening emotionally. So I want to keep toggling back and forth between being focused and specific and helping my client connect to herself. Revisiting breath work with some resistance is going to punctuate this work beautifully. I'm keeping a nice flat palm on the top of her shoulders, and I'm going to ask her to take a big deep breath in. As she does, I want her to bring her shoulders up towards her ears. I'm going to resist those muscular contractions in the neck by keeping pressure against that elevation. And as she exhales, I guide those shoulders back down away from her ears, creating a lot of extra length. This taps into that neurological component and is kind of like taking that last little ravel of the rope and helping it to unwind. The icing on the cake for this session is going to be a posterior neck stretch. There are so many incredible neck stretches that we can do, but for this one, I want to make sure that I'm standing up, keeping my body mechanics at the forefront. And all I'm doing here is using my left hand to lift her head up off the table and using my right hand in the same way that I did before, sliding underneath her back and her shoulder, keeping the back of my hand on the table, lifting my fingers and drawing a line from the scapular region all the way up through the top of the shoulder, into the posterior neck and up to the base of the skull. As you wrap things up, remember this: you just navigated some serious gatekeepers. This work is profound, effective, and incredibly important. And best of all, AI can't do this.